win around, right? Because that means they only have one argument that the other side needs to disprove in order for you to lose your entire round. So having multiple pins of what you're supporting your argument under helps with that. And underneath each contention, you're going to have subpoints and impacts that will help explain what the contention is doing and why it's doing it. Because in debate, you can't just say this will happen. You have to explain why it happens. Okay, so this is how you structure your contentions. Don't rush to write everything down. This will repeat. The color coding will just be different. So the beginning of your contention is going to be one, the name of the contention. So what most debaters will do is they'll name a contention 1, contention 2, so that it's easier to signpost, which means during the debate, people know what you're saying and where you are in your debate, and it's not just a huge chunk of information. So for this contention, it's contention 1, economic. Contention 1 is the name of the contention, and then economic competitiveness is the tagline, which we went over yesterday in cards, having a tagline that condenses what your main chunk of argument is going to be. The next beginning part of your contention is going to be the claim underneath it. So it's kind of clarifying more what the tagline means in specific. So here it's H-1B visas allow for more global economic competitiveness by closing the skill gap. So you can see this explains the very short argument that you proposed above in a way that contextualizes it to your resolution. And then the subpoint A, uniqueness, is going to be your background information. So it's going to tell you what about, very specifically about economic competitiveness is happening with H-1B visas and why economic competitiveness is important. So here it says income inequality shows decreasing domestic competition. So this sets up like why it could be important, why we need to have economic competitiveness. To give you a better description of what uniqueness is, because I think you guys, like contention 1, the tagline and the claim are pretty intuitive. But uniqueness is a very debate-specific jargon word. The next slide is going to tell you what uniqueness is. So is everyone good with like your notes? Thumbs up, down, unmute yourself, say yes, no, maybe so. You're very mad at me. I don't know what you guys want to say, but are you good to move on? If it's silent for like 30 seconds.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So, okay, so uniqueness. So uniqueness is the context and the status quo. So like what's happening right now. I don't really understand what this uniqueness example is, but it's just giving you background for your specific example. And these are really important because it gives you a reason to create change, right? If what's happening right now is really good, there's no reason to change anything, right? So you need to explain why something is like bad or why something's on some sort of brink in order to bring your proposal for change forward. So that's why uniqueness is important. The middle structure of your contention is going to be your links and internal links. So the example link here is foreign skilled workers boost gross human capital. So what it's trying to do is essentially take the uniqueness point and explain it into an argument. So it's connecting like this vague idea of what you're arguing about and really clarifying how the argument goes in one direction or another. So this link is explaining how like it boosts human capital and makes it so that there's more economic competition that way. The internal link further clarifies that and essentially makes it more specific and links it to like a greater impact later on. So in this case, it's gross human capital increases U.S. competitiveness. So it explains what gross human capital does in order to increase the economy overall. So going into what a link is, so essentially the link tries to establish some sort of causation. So if the uniqueness is like an idea, the link shows what causes that or like how what you're doing can cause a change in that. So here we have uniqueness, online education is bad, and the link is that the plan makes education better. So whatever this plan is doing is causing online education to improve. Everyone good? The internal link is not always necessary. Not all cases use them, and you'll see later on what we mean by that. But it's a good thing to do if you have multiple steps from like a link to explain how you're getting to a certain. So it essentially connects the link to like an impact, which we haven't gone over yet, or another internal link, and it's like adding more daisies onto a chain. So for the example, we have uniqueness, online education is bad. The link is the app creates a plan that makes education better. The internal link is that education, an increase in education gets more jobs because these jobs are like higher quality. And the internal link to that is that having higher quality and a greater number of jobs means a better economy overall because more people are employed, which decreases the employment rate, that kind of thing. So you can see where we're going with that, right? All these ideas. You want to explain how something gets better, and you're doing it by creating a chain of argumentation that follows that. Okay. The end of your contention structure is going to be your impact. So it's highlighted here in red, and the impact that we're giving you is impact example that we're giving you is that US competitiveness is key to preventing war. So we're explaining it means. So we go from this idea that like we're going to achieve economic competitiveness, and now we're explaining what economic competitiveness does and why that matters to people that are listening. So the impacts are going to be tangible things to your audience or to your judge. So it's going to be like explaining to your judge that like you make it so, oh my God, you make it so that they like don't die, or that they get to keep their job, or that, I don't know, you save their dog from like a tree because there's a fire. You want people most is going to generally be your impact. So what is an impact? So essentially it's the final effect of the contention. So it's what you're trying to link to, the good or bad thing that you're trying to get to in the end. If any of the TAs want to add to that to better explain it, go ahead.
Well, I just kind of wanted to add how, like, I don't know if this is just a policy thing, but there's usually two parts. Impact. So the impact that Mira just described was like the impact, right? We need to prevent war, right? So the impact in that scenario would be war. The terminal impact is extinction, because war causes it to go nuclear, or and everyone dies. Or it could, even the terminal impact could also just be called, in that case, like if war happens, like all these people die, and that's really bad, right? Because like millions of people will die if there was a war. So a terminal impact is pretty much the reason why the impact is bad, right? Like if war, why is war bad? Because it causes this many lives to get lost, or it causes our economy to go down, right? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. So it's essentially telling you like why all these little things that might not seem like they matter a lot to people who probably wouldn't experience it. So this is the first way that we're going to teach you how to set up arguments. And so that brings us to our first question slide of the day. So if anyone has any questions, now is a phenomenal time to ask them, because we are going to, because the next part is also going to be long. So if you have any questions on this, ask them right now so that it doesn't get confusing later on.
Before we start, I wanted to say something about the impacts. Simply put, it's just you're trying to make like a pointer or like clarify or distinguish a certain point of why the judge needs to care about what you're saying, right? Like you can talk about all these different arguments, but essentially the impact is where you really like make it clear to the to your judge, like if you don't vote for my side or if you don't agree with me, then this impact will happen, or that's one of the ways you can kind of convince your judge. And so your judge should care, for those of you who are a little bit confused.
a way one of my coaches puts it to me is that in any argument that you make, the impact is the thing that you intuitively go to. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't agree with me, like, you're going to lose a lot of money, or you're going to, like, gain a lot of weight and die, something like that, right? But what makes an impact actually stand out and be supported is how you link it together, right? So if you have no logical backing, if you have no reason why your impact will happen, your impact doesn't work, right? Which is why all the steps that we're telling you in a contention are all important, because it's allowing you to explain how this one really important thing or a few really important things ends up happening. My English today is impeccable. Okay, is everyone good? The next type of argument construction we're going to be doing is more so based in, I would say, like policy and parley. And so it's not being taught to all the labs, but we just are going to do it because it makes the most sense to Zara and I, and we're the people teaching. So, you know, we get the veto call, I guess. And so it's going to be,
Yeah, sorry, if I can just jump in really fast. We would encourage you to use the contention style during the tournament.
Mhm.
But for, like, if you're planning on competing during the school year at, like, various local and national tournaments, you should probably use this style if you're going to be doing PFLD or Parley.
And also, no matter what, use the style that makes the most sense to you. Like, the vast majority of people who are going to be judging you at that tournament are people that you are seeing, like, every single day show up. And we are showing up because we do understand some parts about debate. So you should be able to get away with both styles, and we'll be able to understand what you're saying. Just, you know, the contention style was put forth first because it's generally seen as, like, a little bit easier to understand. Okay. So now that, let's get into advantages and disadvantages. So advantages and disadvantages are used essentially on the AF, and then advantages on the AF and disadvantages on the neg. This gets more mixed up as, like, plans and debates get more complicated, but for right now, that's the distinction we're going to make. So here I gave you two common abbreviations for that you'll see in debate. So advantage is ADV, and then disadvantages, people will say them as, like, DAs. So if you're actually on circuit, like, people will be like, can I have, like, your DA2? What's your, like, sub point 2A for, like, your DA, like, 1? Stuff like that is what you'll hear in round. So just so you get used to the terminology. So advantages are used when you're on the affirmative generally, and they explain, like, basically what are the advantages for the action or the plan that you're putting forth. So, like, why should we be increasing H-1B visas, right? And you need to be explaining what the advantages are for that, right? So, like, an increase in immigration, an increase in, like, smart people, something like that you're explaining to the audience. And essentially it allows you to very clearly state what is, like, a pro of what you're saying, because it's this hook of, like, it's called an advantage, so the judge automatically knows that it's a good thing for your side, right? It's a good thing for the topic. The disadvantages are generally used when you're on the negative, and it essentially explains why there are disadvantages to what the affirmation is saying. This also gives you a clear indication of sides, and it just allows you to have, like, more outlined debates in a way. If anyone else wants to jump in this explanation, go ahead. Nope? Okay, cool. So now let's go on to the advantage structure. The advantage structure is done pretty similarly to an extent as the contention structure is, but you see we're missing an internal link because it's not as important when you're giving an advantage. So for your advantage, you're going to have the number and the tagline, and then you're going to have point A is uniqueness. So, like, what is uniquely bad right now that must be changed? Why do we need to change it? The current context, or, like, any background the judge needs to know that probably won't know when you're arguing about it. So one of my favorite topics to argue as an advantage or a disadvantage is stock buybacks, which is a really weird topic, right? So that's in those types of situations, and almost in all situations, you need to have a lot of background or a good number of background to give judges a grasp of what you're saying, right? Because if they don't know what you're saying, there's no way you're going to win the argument, no matter how smart you sound. I know, it sucks. I wish I could win rounds just off sounding smart. just tell them I'm very photosynthesis. Anyways, the second part of your advantage is going to be your links. So it's pretty similar to the links that we discussed above. It's going to be establishing causation that's happening. So it's going to be telling you like what is connecting the action that you're doing with positive change and with the advantage that you're saying. So how are you gaining access from your action to your ultimate, like what you're arguing is going to happen because of that. So let's go on to an advantage example. So for advantage one, if we're arguing H-1B visas and we say it's going to have an economic increase, subpoint A, uniqueness, is going to be that there's a decrease in workers in the United States due to currently falling immigration numbers. And in addition to that, due to the current virus and the subsequent lack of business confidence, the economy is currently fallen, which means we're already in a bad state, which gives us incentive to want to work towards something greater, to implement a policy that fixes that, right? And then subpoint C is going to be that H-1B visas allow for workers to enter the United States that might not have been allowed access previously. So the links to that is, one, increasing the amount of H-1B visas increases the amount of available workers in the United States. I probably misspelled that because it's giving me an error sign. Just ignore that. I definitely graduated high school. Okay, but you can see that this is telling you, like, so explaining why we're solving some of these problems and where we're getting to this economic increase, right? And this will establish essentially causation for what we're going to be doing. Or it won't, because I didn't fix that. Okay. The second point of links that I was going to say is that, an increased workforce increases the production ability of a country. So what that means is that because there's more people, it means the country can produce more. It means its economy can essentially do more because there's more manpower behind it, right? So it's explaining how having more people is increasing the economy, right? So the impacts of that is what ultimately happens when you like increase the economy based off the plan that we have, based off the current uniqueness, is that you're going to stop whatever looming recession we have. So like the economy is getting bad right now because of whatever virus stuff. Yeah, we're stopping that because there's more people and these people can do work and like add to the economy and like sell stuff and do all that, right? And then next is that like this will stabilize the economy. Stabilizing the economy is good because it means that there's less fluctuation, there's more business confidence, it means that GDP is going to go up, stuff like that, right? And then it's going to increase possible economic growth, right? When you have a stable economy, it means that future businesses can project more spending, which would increase the economy. So you see how we're getting to these like end results, I guess. Yes, I can. Okay, so is that good for everyone? So it doesn't seem particularly different, I guess, in the advantage section, but it will, I find that it's helpful because it just allows you to see like you want a good thing to come out of it and a bad thing to come out of it. Do any of the TAs have anything to say on like advantages before we move on?
Just remember, for an advantage, you always want to solve some sort of issue that is presented by the status quo, right? So like there's something wrong with what's happening right now. Your plan will resolve this, and this is how to resolve this, and this is the bad thing that we're preventing. The structure we give you really just gives you a good way to format that so that it's clear what you're talking about. You're not gonna get stuck in loopholes. And Mira, I don't know if you saw the chat, but someone asked if we can go back to the slides that gives the form for the contention.
Oh yeah, I think he wanted it at the end of the lecture though. I'm not sure what he wanted. Yeah, but that's like kind of the main idea of this. Okay, is everyone else good? Now going on to disadvantages. So disadvantages are going to have all the parts of what we saw previously in a contention, and it's going to look kind of similar to advantages. So you're going to have the same thing. You're going to want to be numbering something, and then you're going to want a tagline, and then you're going to have a uniqueness that is doing the same thing. So one you could be doing is you could be agreeing that there's something uniquely bad happening that needs to be changed, but you don't like the way that the other side is going about changing it. So this. So let's say like China's increasing aggression, right? And like one side's way to stop the aggression is like, we should just nuclear bomb China so China doesn't exist anymore, and then we have no more aggression problems, right? Is that a solution that would get rid of the problem? Sure. But is that the best way to get rid of the problem? Maybe not. So as a negative, you can then go up and like propose a different solution to the problem. And in that case, you would be agreeing that there's a problem right now, but you have a different way to fix it. And you're explaining why your way of fixing it is better. That like something that's happening right now is okay, and changing it would actually make the problem worse. So those are the two ways you can go about writing your DAs, and essentially your uniqueness will be tied to whichever one that is. So whether you're agreeing that it's uniquely bad and you're explaining that, or you are explaining why right now is like an okay place to be at. Like, we're not doing bad, everything's fine, don't fix it if it ain't broke, kind of thing. Yeah, Catherine, you can go see this outside of lecture. We'll post that we have in the Google Classroom. If you go down to Lab 1B, you'll be able to see it there. Okay, so then we go on to the links. So the links is basically like explaining why the uniqueness is happening and why that's creating like a disadvantage, or it's creating like a disadvantage for the affirmation, or like in that case, a good thing for the negation, right? Because like a weakness in your opponent is a good thing for you. So it explains like how the status quo might fix something. So what's going on right now might fix something, or how like the action is making something worse. And then after that, you have the internal links, which would explain what happens in the link, the connect or disconnect from the plan, be a good or bad impact. So it's getting you to the point where you can then start saying an impact is happening, if that makes sense. So yeah. Oh my God, my throat is dying. Okay. And the last thing is going to be the same thing as we did last time, the impacts. It's either going to be a positive or a negative thing. It can be like a negative thing for the affirmation, and you can be like, this really bad thing is going to happen if you vote for the AF, which is why you shouldn't vote for the AF. Or if you're proposing a counter plan, or if like you're advocating for what's going on right now and you're like, this is something that's really, really good that comes out of what's going on right now, that's where you'll make your impact, right? Because if something's good is happening on your side, it's bad for the affirmation. Okay, any of the TAs have, or like other coaches have anything to say on the structure role part, clarifications? Okay. So then we're gonna go on to the example. Very warm. The first DA, the example of DA that I'm going to give you is brain drain. So the uniqueness is that H-1B visas only allow for skilled workers. So it's not like broadly workers, it's only people who have like specific marketable skills, likely higher degrees and stuff like that. What the US is currently lacking is manual laborers. The US has their own skilled workers that like come out of colleges. Like we have thousands of colleges. The people that come out of it are like skilled workers. Other countries are dependent on their native-born skilled workers just as much as the United States is. You know, like India, China, like people come out of their colleges as skilled workers, and their countries need skilled workers to essentially create innovations there, right? So brain drain is essentially the concept of one country taking away highly skilled workers from another. And in a global market, it's important that like all countries are faring relatively well, especially because today's markets are global. Oh. So the links are going to be first that like an increase skilled work. We already have those, right? So why would we need more of them? And then secondarily, more H-1B visas means other countries lose their native skilled workers, right? Because you're taking skilled workers from these other countries. So the internal link is that the increase in skilled workers in the US increases competition, which means it's less likely that people will like get jobs or have higher pay and stuff like that in the United States. Secondarily, the decreasing number of skilled workers abroad means other countries like slow down, right? If you don't have your economy slow down, what you're able to do slows down, right? So the impacts of that are mainly a decrease in skilled labor jobs in the United States, which hurts the economy, a decrease in global productivity because like the world can no longer all be productive. It's like concentrated in one country, which is inherently bad, and that would also cause the global economy to slow. So that's kind of where you would get to that point in the disadvantage. So do you see how like this part is explaining why increasing the number, like the really bad effects of like increasing H-1B visas. Keep in mind, I kind of wrote these on like a whim. So they're not really fleshed out. They're not exactly what you would use in a tournament, but they give you a rough idea of it. Does anyone have any questions on like DAs and how those would work? Okay, so are there any questions on like writing advantages or disadvantages? I had a question to go back to the advantage structure, so here's that. Any of the TAs have anything else to say? Like, pop in the chat, let me know when you're done with the advantage structure slide.
Oh, I meant the contention structure. Sorry, I wasn't able to tell you. Sorry.
Someone else asked for the advantage slide, so I was going to go back over that first and then go back up. Sarah got you the link to the master doc. It's in the chat if you guys want to go there and save it on your own computers. Bookmark the page, all that fun stuff. So no one has any other questions, comments, concerns? No one needs to know like how to use it in round or anything like that. Ben, is this slide okay?
Yeah. Thank you.
Does anyone have any really bad horror stories of like really bad case creation from any of the TAs that are amazing? Guess that makes sense.
For the case I used for Berkeley,
Uh-huh.
my partner left the prep session really early and left me to write basically the entire case. So I had to do like really fast. It wasn't that good, but like when I was up there actually like debating, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I could have done this so much better. I could have done this so much better. I could have done this so much better.
Yeah.
Because like in my head, I think this is like goes for a lot of debaters. When you write your case, in your head, you can think of basically every refutation for it. Like you think of every way this could possibly go wrong.
And think about that as like kind of a strength, because while you're writing your cases, you should be trying to predict what someone else will say about your case.
Because, well,
Yeah.
sorry.
If you want another horror story, it was actually also for Berkeley this year. I didn't do a lot of debating this year because I spent most of my time teaching, but Berkeley was one of the only tournaments I went to for policy. And I learned what my case said during the tournament. So round one, I believe I was AF. I learned exactly what I was supposed to be saying as I was going through the round. It was an interesting round to say the least. Not the most organized, so I encourage you to get to know your AF inside and out before you go to a tournament.
One of my horror stories is that when I went to ASU, or like I think it's called like the Arizona Invitation.